He sat, continuing to wonder for quite some time. Hours seemed to pass, yet there he sat. Perhaps he had become lost in something deeper than the ability to express whatever it was.
How can I face the fact of nothing, which is by definition not a fact?
So if you really go the whole way and see how you feel at the prospect of vanishing, of all your efforts and all your achievements and all your attainments turning into dust. Nothingness. What is the feeling? What happens to it? It's a curious thing that in the world's poetry, this is a very common theme. The earthly hope men set their hearts upon and turns ashes, or it prospers, and anon, like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lighting a little hour or two, is gone. All kinds of poetry emphasizes the theme of transience, and there's a kind of nostalgic beauty to it. Death seems so final. Nothingness seems so very, very irrevocable and permanent. But then if it is, what about the nothingness that was before you started? By attributing powerlessness to nothingness, we don't realize that is a complete logical fallacy. On the contrary, it takes nothing to have something. Because you wouldn't know what something was without nothing. You wouldn't know what the form is without the background space. You wouldn't be able to see anything unless there were nothing behind your eyes. The most real state is the state of nothing. That's what it's going to all come to. With these physicists who think of the energy of the universe running down, dissipating in radiation, gradually, until there's nothing to hold back. For some reason or other, we're supposed to find this depressing. Somebody is going to argue that the basic reality is nothingness. Where does all this come from? Obviously from nothingness. Once again, you get how it looks behind your eyes. So cheer up, you see. This is what is meant in Buddhist philosophy by saying we are all basically nothing. See? So in this way, by seeing that nothingness is the fundamental reality, and you see it's your reality, then how can anything contaminate it? All the idea of being scared and put out and worried and so on is just nothing. It's a dream. Because you're really nothing. But this is the most incredible nothing. The mind, the consciousness, was like a mirror which had to be polished. And constantly I have to polish my mirror. I have to purify my mind, see? So that I'm detached and calm and clear-headed, Buddha. If you think of this nothingness as mere blankness, then you hold on to the idea of blankness and kind of grisly about it. You haven't understood it. He said nothingness is really like the nothingness of space, which contains the whole universe. All the sun, moon, and stars, and the mountains and rivers, and the good men and the bad men, and the animals and the insects, the whole bit. All are contained in one void. So out of this void comes everything, and you're it. What else?
Everything has its wonders, even darkness and silence. What does the future look like? How will the universe meet its end? We may never be truly certain. But science has begun to paint a stunning picture of how the future might unfold. Let's take a journey to the end of time. We will travel through time exponentially, doubling our speed every 5 seconds. This vision of the future will surely evolve as we probe for more clues, but one thing is clear. The universe has only just begun.
The Holocene has ended. What we do now, and in the next few years, will profoundly affect the next few thousand years. The only conditions modern humans have ever known so far are changing, and changing fast.
Nothing stays the same on this planet. Everything changes. The Earth is going into one of these jumps, and you don't know what is going to be on the other side of those jumps. The Earth is always jumping. Things move on this planet. Things are not still. Everything is turning.
Because what happens is the gravity of the black hole is extreme, as you can imagine. Light doesn't even escape. Its gravity is so extreme. Light traveling at the speed of light, all right? Just to put that in context, if you wanted to escape the Earth, it's actually possible to do that, contrary to what your grandparents told you, where they said, what goes up must come down. That's just not true. Well, there's nothing your grandparents ever threw that never came down. But with rockets, with high enough speed, you can send something so it never comes back. For Earth, that speed is 7 miles per second. And we call that the escape velocity. But if I throw something, oh, got apples here, good. If I throw this not fast enough, it comes back. So most of life experience tells you that what goes up comes down. 7 miles per second, this never comes back. It goes to the edge of the universe there. Okay, so now, it turns out on a black hole, the escape velocity is so high that speed of light is not good enough. So if light doesn't come out, nothing's coming out, it's black, you fall in, you're not coming out, it's a one-way trip, okay? So if you die this way, you won't get to tell anyone how you died. That's for start. But second, as you fall in, you don't just die because you disappear. You die long before you disappear. As you fall in, the gravity at your feet becomes rapidly greater than the gravity at your head. Now it turns out, if you stand on Earth, that fact is true under those conditions as well, because your feet are closer to Earth's center than the top of your head is. So your feet actually feel a stronger force of gravity, but not by much. Because if you're 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall, and Earth is like 4,000 miles in radius, that difference is not that great compared with the distance to the center of the Earth. Black hole, they're so small, so compact, that your height matters as you fall in towards the black hole. So your feet start falling faster than your head does. That's a bad situation to be in. You don't really, initially you kind of feel good, because we all stretch when you wake up in the morning. initially it feels like a stretch.
Right, sort of general relativity, kind of yoga.
Okay, it's a kind of yoga, cosmic yoga. But what happens is that stretch continues beyond comfort levels. And you reach a point where, and they're called the tidal forces, tides on your body basically. The tidal force becomes so great that they exceed the intermolecular forces that bind your flesh. And so the point comes where you snap into two pieces, likely to happen at the base of your spine. Now you are two pieces. Now, it turns out, now I know you didn't ask about this, but I got a whole chapter on it. So, it turns out you will survive that snap because below your waist, while there are important organs, there are no vital organs below your waist. So, your torso will stay alive for a little while, okay, until you bleed to death. But this all happens much faster than it would take to bleed to death. So, these two pieces then feel tidal forces, and then they snap into two pieces. And then they snap again into 8, and then 16, and then you're bifurcating your way down. And so eventually it's your head and multiple other parts. And so that will continue until you are a stream of atoms descending toward the abyss. And it turns out that's not the worst of it. Okay? The worst, it turns out the fabric of space and time funnels down towards a black hole. So the space that you occupy up here is larger than the space you occupy down here. So in fact, while you're getting stretched, you're getting squeezed, extruded through the fabric of space like toothpaste through a tube. Now, we have a word for that. It's called spaghettification. Okay? So, invented for just this purpose. One thing we're good at in English is having words for ways to die. Right? We have a word if you kill someone else, a different word if you kill yourself, a different word if you're killed by electricity, a different word, all words for how to die. Add spaghettification to it.
The Holocene has ended. What we do now and in the next few years will profoundly affect the next few thousand years. The only conditions modern humans have ever known so far are changing, and changing fast.
Nothing stays the same on this planet. Everything changes. The Earth is going into one of these jumps, and you don't know what is going to be on the other side of those jumps. The Earth is always jumping. Things move on this planet. Things are not still. Everything is turning.
it begins to run out of fuel, the sun won't simply fade away to nothing. Its core will collapse, and the extra heat this generates will cause its outer layers to expand. The sun is now dead. Its remains slowly cooling in the freezing temperatures of deep space. The fate of the sun is the same as for all stars. One day they must all eventually die and the cosmos will be plunged into eternal night.
All stars eventually will run out of fuel. The temperature of the universe drops. The stars, one by one, in the night sky, will turn off. And there'll be no more new stars created. And so that the universe will end not with a bang, but with a whimper. And not in fire, but in ice.
With no fuel left to burn, a white dwarf's faint glow comes from the last residual heat from its extinguished furnace. Looking at it from where the Earth is now, it would only generate the same amount of light as the full moon on a clear night. The faint glow of white dwarfs will provide the only illumination in a dark and empty void littered with dead stars and black holes.
In some ways, it's kind of a ghost universe. It's the corpses, the zombie stars, that will take us into the future.
Dwarf will be the final fate of those last stars. White dwarfs that have become so cold that they barely emit any more heat or light. Black dwarfs are dark, dense, decaying balls of degenerate matter, little more than the ashes of stars. Their constituent atoms are so severely crushed that black dwarfs are 1,000,000 times denser than our sun. Stars take so long to reach this point we believe there are currently no black dwarfs in the universe.
We have a pace of life that's based on really the energy available to us now. You could imagine living conscious systems which have a very different pace and therefore can extend out at least a lot farther than you'd imagine otherwise. You could have a living system where if it had a thought every 10 trillion years, that would seem normal. Even if our life dies out, one could imagine at some time arbitrarily far in the future, a fluctuation occurs which allows intelligent life to exist again for a little while. So you might have islands in time of intelligence.
Proton, one of the fundamental building blocks of atomic matter, what makes us up, can just spontaneously fall apart.
Any material that evades the pull of a black hole eventually dies away as its protons disintegrate.
The matter inside black dwarfs, the last matter in the universe, will eventually evaporate away and be carried off into the void as radiation, leaving absolutely nothing behind.
With the black dwarfs gone, there won't be a single atom of matter left. All that will remain of our once rich cosmos will be particles of light and black holes. The arrow of time creates a bright window in the universe's adolescence, during which life is possible. But it's a window that doesn't stay open for long. As a fraction of the lifespan of the universe, as measured from its beginning to the evaporation of the last black hole, life, as we know it, is only possible for 1,000th of a billion billion billionth billion billion billionth billion billion billionth of a percent.
Black holes become the fundamental building block of the universe. A galaxy will basically be a supermassive black hole in a center with smaller black holes orbiting it.
Zombie galaxies filled with black holes continue to evolve.
They'll eat each other and they'll get bigger, and maybe they'll fall into the supermassive black hole and it'll get bigger. The universe will still be an exciting, dynamic place. It's just that the timescales we're talking about are now trillions of years instead of thousands or millions of years.
Space-time like mallets on a drum. And they have a very characteristic song. Imagine two black holes that have lived a long life together. At the end of their lives, they're going around each other, crossing thousands of kilometers in a fraction of a second. As they do so, they leave behind in their wake a ringing of space, an actual wave on space-time. Space squeezes and stretches as it emanates out from these black holes banging on the universe. Those are the gravitational waves. They are literally the sounds of space ringing. And they will travel out from these black holes at the speed of light as they ring down and coalesce to one spinning, quiet black hole. If you were standing near enough, your ear would resonate with the squeezing and stretching of space. You would literally hear the sound. Imagine a lighter black hole falling into a very heavy black hole. The sound you're hearing is a light black hole banging on space each time it gets close. As it falls in, it gets faster and it gets louder.
Scientists used to think black holes were immortal, but even these one day die.
Now we're talking about timescales of unimaginable length, quadrillions of years into the future. On that timescale, even the black holes begin to evaporate.
According to quantum mechanics, space is filled with virtual particles and antiparticles that are constantly materializing in pairs, separating, coming together again, and annihilating each other. In the presence of a black hole, one member of a pair of virtual particles may fall into the hole, leaving the other member without a partner with which to annihilate. The forsaken particle appears to be radiation emitted by the black hole. And so, black holes are not eternal. They evaporate away at an increasing rate until they vanish in a gigantic explosion. Quantum mechanics has allowed particles and radiation to escape from the ultimate prison, a black hole.
Philosophers and poets have asked the question, will the world end in fire or ice? We can now give an answer. The latest evidence shows that the universe is not slowing down, but it's speeding up out of control. And the universe, we think, will die in ice. Trillions upon trillions of years from now.
Empty space itself has energy. In every little cubic centimeter of space, whether or not there's stuff, whether or not there's particles, matter, radiation, or whatever, there is still energy, even in the space itself. And this energy, according to Einstein, exerts a push on the universe.
What is the weird stuff that's accelerating the universe? We call it dark energy. And this stuff is the dominant stuff of the universe. Almost 3/4 of the matter-energy content of the universe is this dark energy.
God.
And we don't know what it is.
Dark energy, unlike matter or radiation, does not dilute away as the universe expands. This has crucial implications for what the universe is going to do in the future.
So what will be the future of the universe? Well, if the dark energy remains dominant and repulsive, the universe will expand forever. Faster and faster and faster with time. A runaway universe.
70% of the energy of the universe resides in empty space, and we don't understand why. But we do know what will happen. If that energy continues to be there, the universe will become cold and dark and empty. That's the future as it might be. We don't know because we don't yet understand the nature of dark energy. Until we do, we won't know the future. We won't even understand our own origins, and that's why we want to know and study this subject.
does seem to be for an ever colder, ever emptier universe. But then, of course, we have to ask, could that end lead to a new beginning?
Yes.
And there are ideas whereby what actually is the end of our universe could in some sense be linked to the beginning of a new one.
The acorn and the oak.
We've worked out the mathematics, the equations. They seem to say that if you have an atom smasher that can concentrate tremendous amounts of energy at a single point, you can perhaps open up a gateway, a baby universe. Facing the death of everything there is, this perhaps is their only possibility of escape.
You don't need to escape.
And this also raises a very intriguing possibility, sheer speculation of course, that perhaps any universe that has intelligent life in it will create baby universes, will create lifeboats, and proliferate child universes.
That's the acorn.
So an evolution may take among universes in the multiverse. Survival of the fittest may take place. So those universes which do not have intelligent life are infertile. They have no children. But those universes that have mild temperatures, stars like us, would create civilizations that could open up child universes, and they would then proliferate.
After an unimaginable length of time, even the black holes will have evaporated, and the universe will be nothing but a sea of photons gradually tending towards the same temperature as the expansion of the universe cools them towards absolute zero. Once the very last remnants of the very last stars have finally decayed away to nothing, and everything reaches the same temperature, the story of the universe finally comes to an end. For the first time in its life, the universe will be permanent and unchanging. Entropy finally stops increasing because the cosmos cannot get any more disordered. Nothing happens, and it keeps not happening forever.
This is where Watts disagrees. From nothing comes something. one-shot segments coming up. That's fucking fantastic by Melody Sheep. I have so many feelings right now.
Tears of grief and tears of... firmly believe that you just, after all this anxiety, you can't stop it. The million masks of the Joker, with which the individual's concerned, and it's all he knows, that the very intensity of seriousness with which the individuals concerned are taking these games will be, when you might say, there are these classes of people. There are the very far out people and the very far in people. Now, ordinarily we say someone's very far out when they are oddballs, when they are exceedingly unconventional. But I want you to turn the picture round and look as a conventional person, look at a square as a person who's very far out. That is to say, he is so involved in the seriousness of the game he is playing that he is lost. He doesn't know where he started from, and he thinks he's there. But he's completely lost, because he is actually under the cover of his assurance, of his status, of his position in society. He's really a very anxious person. I said a lot yesterday about the way in which our society shows anxiety because it cannot permit the existence of people who don't belong. And it cannot really permit the criticism of laughter. It cannot permit the presence of the old-fashioned court jester. Because these people are so far out. They are so involved, and one from a certain standpoint, you see, from the Joker's standpoint, he doesn't condemn such people. He rather congratulates them on their heroism for getting so lost and involved. But to keep the far-out people from going quite insane, there have to be far-in people. And the far-in people are those who keep contact with the original goings-on behind the scenes. They are like the prompter in the theatre, where there are the actors out on the stage relying on their memories, etc., and they're supposed to get completely involved in the play. But there's a concealed prompter with the script in front of him. And he is the connection of the actor on the stage with the green room behind the stage. And you see in this dramatic analogy of the universe, the green room is the central point, the still point of the turning world. The green room is how God is when he's back home, not involved in all these games, and takes off the mask. see, on the Hindu theory that everybody is a mask of God. Like a wonderful line in one of Chesterton's poems. And now a great thing in the street seems any human nod, where move in strange democracy the million masks of God. The million masks of the Joker, because the Joker is the player, the trick player, who plays ultimately the great trick on himself. So really, there can be no resentment about this. Nobody to blame, nobody to turn around to in the end and say, you bastard, you did this to me. Because it's always you who are ultimately responsible. So, this prompter, you see, keeps the actor on the stage in touch with the green room. And so there are certain people in the world who might be a kind of a priesthood sometimes, although priesthoods are apt to become corrupt and square, but a kind of people in the know. There always has to be somebody around in the know, so that, as it were, the wheel of society and of existence, the wheel of the squirrel cage, the wheel of the rat race, can have an axle firmly planted. And at the center then there have to be the far in people. So this is the domain of jokers. Now, having developed that side of the joker, the person who sees through the social institutions as games, I went on in the second session to discuss another aspect of the joker as the sly man, in comparison with the monk, the fakir, and the yogi, who undertake, all those three, undertake in certain different ways disciplines which have the intent of releasing them from their karma. The individual, in other words, challenges his involvement, his attachments, his limitations, his finitude, and endeavors to overcome it. But in each of these three cases, the individual involved stirs up an immense opposition, because he serves notice upon the devil, or shall we say upon his karmic creditors, that he is about to leave town. And so all the creditors come rushing to the door. All his past sins catch up with him. And the devil lays his temptations in the way all the more thoroughly. So that the sly man is the one who, when he is going to leave town, does so instantaneously without any prior announcement. And so in this way there is, shall we say, a cunning manner of becoming a Buddha. And that is to become one instantly, without any preparation or warning whatsoever. This is why Zen is called the sudden school, and why Satori is a sudden awakening. Because it has to be done without the slightest warning. Now, but then I pointed out that the moment you have any idea about doing this, you've already ceased to be sudden. That is to say, the moment you seek for some spiritual attainment, which is becoming a Buddha, becoming awakened, becoming released, getting in there, you've already served notice upon your creditors. So that somehow or other you find that you have to do it without intending to do it. And that is a double bind. which you impose upon yourself when you say, I must find a way of doing this spontaneously. That's the old basic double bind. You must be spontaneous. You are commanded, or you command yourself to do something which is acceptable only if it happens spontaneously. Then you think about that and say, well, what a fix that is. Here am I saying, I must be surprised, and I'm going to lay plans to surprise myself. So by going through this, you discover naturally that can't be done. You can't surprise yourself on purpose. Yet that's what you have to do. So what about it? You come to a state of total paralysis. You're stuck. The one thing that is terribly important to be done can't be done. It has to happen. It really does if you're earnest about this. You want to get out of the trap. But you can't do anything about it, either actively or passively. But then as you begin to see what you are doing all the time, you notice a very odd fact, which is that you can't help being spontaneous. If I say to you, good morning, and you say good morning, what is that? Did you plan this answer? Did you make preparations to grow your hair? Do you make decisions about having blue eyes? You see, about breathing, is this all planned? About beating your heart? And what about your thinking? Even if it's very blocked thinking, even if you feel from a certain point of view that you're all mixed up, what is going on anyway? You see, you can't stop it. It's like trying to, we were discussing the Gurdjieff thing yesterday, the self-remembering exercise, the attempt to live completely in the present. Well, that's not only a Gurdjieff idea, that's a very ancient yoga and Buddhist discipline, to be completely here and now. But of course, as you pursue this, you discover you can't do it, because you couldn't even know when to go shopping unless you made plans and started thinking about the future. You couldn't move. But then you discover, you see, that in the long run there's nothing to think about except the here and now. There really isn't anything else. Because even when you make plans for the future and you remember the past, you're doing it all in the present. Your memory is a present activity. There's no way of not being self-remembering and having presence of mind. So when you discover that, there's nothing left to you but to have a good laugh. Well, now, I want to develop to a greater extent something I only touched on yesterday afternoon when we were discussing anxiety and laughter and the relationship between the two. I suggested that anxiety and laughter are really the same phenomenon, but seen from different points of view. As we all know, we can have shudders of horror and shudders of delight, tears of grief and tears of joy. And it's the same shudders and the same tears in either case, but they have a completely different meaning. Now, life is a matter of oscillation. Light is vibration. It's the whole time and all the way through. The question is, how are you going to interpret that? Is it tremble, 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 or is it laugh, laugh, laugh? That's the great thing. And sometimes it's one, and sometimes it's the other. So that the whole thing of the Joker is he comes into being, as it were, at the point when the anxiety interpretation of the trembling becomes the laughing interpretation. We were talking about monks who had skulls in their cells to remind them of mortality. And we think a grim thing. The skull is a grim thing. But Chesterton had the poem about the skull. Chattering finch and waterfly are not merrier than I. Here among the flowers I lie, laughing everlastingly. No, I may not tell the best. Surely, friends, I might have guessed, death was but the good king's jest, it was hid so carefully. So you can see the skull not as a grim thing, but as a laughing thing. It's all that's left of a human being. And all the surface is peeled off, and nothing but this beautiful bone remains. It laughs. Now why? What is it about death being a jest? We discussed the problem of the zebra. You remember whether a zebra is a yellow horse with black stripes or a black horse with yellow stripes. And of course, you can see it either way. And you can argue till all is blue about which side is right. And let's suppose that a black horse is a horse of ill omen, even though striped with yellow, and a yellow horse a horse of joy and good omen, even though striped with black. This is our eternal problem. We are in the state of egocentric consciousness, firmly convinced that death is a threat. We are so convinced of this, even though individuals may say, well, I'm not really afraid of death. What I'm afraid of is dying in an unpleasant way. Nevertheless, since almost all moralists and people concerned with ethics seem to agree, whatever their differences of opinion, that survival is a good thing. In some sense, if not survival in this body, even the most, the people who would rather be dead than red, firmly believe that that is true because they believe there is a hereafter, where they can go and where they can be rewarded for the courageous stand against evil which they have taken. You see? So that's still some kind of insistence on the value of survival. And we all cling to this idea of survival with tremendous passion. But we have been fooled.
Because survival is an important ideal only so long as you have bothering you the bugbear of death, that the world might stop altogether, and that your death, so far as you are concerned, is curtained forever. And that is really the bogey. You see, that's all very well to rationalize and say, no, it's not death I'm afraid of, it's the pains of death. But if you think about it deeply, there are several stages in thinking about it deeply. The first stage is the real horrors of endless night, of the futility, of the whole conception that one's own life, or indeed the whole life of the cosmos, might be nothing but a flash, and beyond that, nothing. Nothing, nothing, in all directions. When, for example, we think of the physicist's idea that the universe is running down, that all energy is seeking a stable state. Supposing, for example, to give an illustration of what they mean, I have a jar of black pepper and a jar of salt. And I pour them together into another jar, and I can see the white salt and the black pepper fairly well delineated. Then I start shaking the jar, and slowly, slowly, slowly the black and the white disappear into a grey. That can never be sorted out again into black and white. In this sort of way, as things go on, the universe, they say, it tends to attain a stable state, to run down, run down, run down, until that's the end. And nobody knows how it could possibly start all over again. But I always say, and I feel it in a sort of funny, intuitive way, that what happened once can happen again. If this world started at some time, supposing there was a colossal explosion which set all these galaxies flying out, then what existed before that explosion must surely have been something like the stable state to which we shall run down in the end. And if it went bang once, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't go bang again. I suppose there are temperaments in logic. I have a temperament whereby I just cannot, it seems to me absolutely basic that what happened once can happen again. But there are other people who so cherish the unique that they can conceive the idea of something like existence happening only once. But you see, something that happens only once doesn't happen at all. What happens if a given sound consists of only one vibration? What is the up crest of a wave apart from the down crest? Can you conceive that? That's the same koan as what is the sound of one hand. You see, it always takes two. You can't have a purely left-sided person. Imagine. So, in this way, just as you can't have just one vibration, it's like the saying, the greatest strength of mind is to eat one peanut. and so it can hardly be done. So there isn't just one vibration. and a dit but no da sort of thing. You have to have it do more. So in just the same way, when you magnify this principle, there isn't just one cosmos, or one big explosion that starts and stops. All stopping implies starting. Someone just wrote to me, we haven't parted because we never met. So, the whole point of saying this is the realization that existence is eternal. The going out of existence implies the coming in. And St. Thomas had some points here when he said, there could never have been a time when there was not being, because if there had been a time when there was nothing in nothing to produce something. But he didn't quite have the point, because what he didn't see was that nothing is productive in the sense that you can't have nothing without something. They go together. And all this thing is an argument, again, about whether the zebra is yellow striped black or black striped yellow. And what we see is that the black and the yellow, the darkness and the light, are simply two phases of the same. And that realization is exactly what transforms anxiety into laughter. Suddenly to see that you just, after all this anxiety, that you don't have anything to worry about. Now, that doesn't mean that there will not in our future lie some extremely painful experiences, or experiences that we would ordinarily interpret as horribly painful. We may all die of ghastly diseases, or of radiation burns, or of unimaginable things. The worst part of torture, becomes, in other words, converted into ecstasy. It simply becomes, you see, a way of going through extraordinarily far out sensations which have no meaning. If they have meaning, the meaning of threat, the meaning of death looming at the end, and you know this is the tearing apart and the destruction of you, then you see it is absolutely horrendous. But if it has no meaning at all, just transpose yourself into another dimension to illustrate it, because what the dimension I'm talking about is a very tough one. But let's go back to a simpler one. Let's take sounds. Now, if you lie down and listen to all the goings-on in this area, and you will hear planes moving and cars and foghorns and all kinds of crazy sounds, you see. People this way and that and so on. And you can listen to that and find it very interesting. Very beautiful. But if someone were to do what John Cage does and put you in a concert hall with the expectation of hearing music, and by having a purely silent playing of the piano, compel you instead to listen to all the sounds going on around you, you would be shocked and feel that some kind of an avant-garde hoax had been perpetrated. You see, it depends on the set, on the way you approach the experience. Now, you can listen to sounds that are ordinarily considered unpleasant in a totally unprejudiced way. You can listen to discordant musical noises and find them extremely interesting if you listen carefully enough. You can listen to a squalling brat and find it musical. That this child, I'll never forget waking up one morning and listening to a child whining. The child wasn't saying anything, there were no words in it, it was just a plaint. And it wasn't exactly crying, it was a kind of and there was something marvelous about it. This child's wonderfully articulate protest against some sort of nuisance. And so, listening into those things without interpreting them, listening to one's own interior frustration and pain in the same way without interpreting it as being on one side or the other, on the good side or the bad side, on the black side or the white side, is what makes it possible, you see, to transmute these things. But you can't do this. You can't really, honestly transmute pain into a form of play, a form of weird, far-out sensations that are basically just that. So long as you fail to see the inner unity of the opposites, so long as you fall for the idea that you are nothing more than this particular life, than this particular ego, which came from nowhere and is going nowhere. While you remain under that illusion, you see, you first of all, you don't see your identity with everything else that exists. Now, if death then is a joke, I remember the biggest joke on death I ever saw. I mentioned this in my book. We visited the Capuchin friars' crypt in the Via Veneto in Rome. Some of you may have seen it, where there are 3 underground chapels where everything is made of bones. And the altar is made of bones. The pedestals of the altar are all shin bones. And then there are piles of skulls, and the decoration of flowers on the ceiling are ribs alternating with vertebrae. And the vertebrae are the flowers, and the ribs curl this way, curl this way, curl this way, the twining stems. And the whole thing is bones, and they have even a few full intact skeletons dressed in monks' robes standing on either side of these altars. It's the craziest thing you ever saw. And then when you have seen it and you come out, there is a little friar with a beard taking your offering at the top of the steps. And he had a funny, wicked gleam in his eye. And one could see that this was a joke. The whole thing was a joke. It was constructed by people who had somehow overcome the fear of death. Couldn't possibly have such a thing as that. And so I was fascinated by it because I thought that on the day of the resurrection there's going to be a tremendous scuffle fitting all those bones together and everybody getting up the stairs for the Last Judgment. Well, so if it is seen that death is the jest, but the question is, you see, we are so tormented by the bugbear of it being the real end, by the imagination of the possibility of being in the dark forever. Now, you really must forever of the possibility of being in the dark forever. Now,
hey, this is Jad. Radiolab is supported by IBM. Today, new problems need new thinking. Retailers are turning to the cloud to restock shelves more quickly. Teachers are working with AI to rethink the classroom. Let's put smart to work. See how IBM is helping at ibm.com/COVID-19.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
You're listening to Radiolab
on New York Public Radio.
Public Radio, WNYC.
This is the sound of, what's this exact title of the piece?
3500 AD.
This is the sound of 3500 AD.
I'm knocking on an object that artist Terry Wilcox hopes will be here long after we all turn to dust.
It's actually fastened to the bedrock. The engineering is it'll withstand a 200-mile-an-hour wind.
This thing right here, wow.
It's like a nuclear bomb.
30 years ago, Terry and a few cranes lifted this 40-foot stick and plunged it into this boulder that we're standing on, which overlooks the Hudson.
And the George Washington Bridge is to our right.
The sculpture reflects the sun like a mirror, and it's made out of two metals.
Aluminum on the outside and magnesium pieces.
The concept is simple. One day, many moons from now, these two metals will be one.
The phenomenon is they're mixing together.
How do you mean?
Physically, the layers where the metals are touching, they're physically intermingling. They're evaporating into each other.
It's a process called diffusion.
And in fact, I'll tell you how I heard about it. 1968. They've opened some minor tomb in Egypt and they find gold and lead bars piled up in the corner. The tomb was about 5,000 years old and the bars have become a solid piece. They think it's happening on an atomic level, but they're not sure. But something is making the metals mix.
Maybe just time. Time cracks foundations, erodes borders, erases anything man creates. Civilization, art, particularly art. Time hates art. That's why museums have restorers. But here's Terry trying to collaborate with time. In fact, he says this piece won't be done until time takes the aluminum and the magnesium and fuses them together, which, he calculates, will take 1,495 years. In a sense, that is when this clock will chime. But until then, all you can really do is look at it. So we walk around this piece.
Oh, somebody made it up on this side. God bless.
You think they scaled up there?
On the bolt, sure.
It says Bill number 98 or something?
Underneath Bill 98, park officials have slapped on some anti-graffiti paint.
Some of this paint's still wet.
Terry pulls out a pocket knife and starts to chip some of it away. Underneath the paint, we find more graffiti.
Yeah, it's the graffiti.
Then we find a bullet hole.
This is a bullet.
Oh my gosh. Somebody shot your art.
That's pretty funny.
Do you think it'll make it?
Make what?
The 3,500 year journey?
I have no idea.
What do you think the world will look like when this piece is finished? Do you think any of these buildings, the George Washington Bridge, will be there?
These buildings? No.
While I try to get Terry to philosophize with me, a group of kids approach.
Entonces la pieza va a estar terminada, la obra de arte.
How old are you guys?
15.
Well, nobody
I'm
have that
15.
idea. How long it take to make it?
Almost 2 years.
And when he explains that it won't be done until these kids and their kids and 72 generations yet to come are all dead and gone, their reaction is interesting.
How come you guys are touching? I mean, what makes you want to touch it and grab it?
To see if it's real.
They begin to touch the sculpture, put their palms flat against it. A few even hug it. It's an odd sight, but understandable. And it comes perhaps from the same impulse as Terry's art, as the graffiti, of wanting to leave something of yourself behind. Send something of yourself forward into the future, as if to say, I was here, if only for an instant. I'm Jad Abumrad, and this is Radiolab. Today on our program, stories and conversations with people who swim upstream in the river of time, even though it's an impossible task. And speaking of the impossible, here is my co-host, Robert Krowich.
And in this hour, we will be having an argument with time. We will talk to scientists who say that time doesn't exist. We will talk to stubborn people who argue that, well, maybe it exists, but we're going to pretty much refuse to notice.
Then we'll hear from a guy who thinks he can turn time around, turn it back.
Or defeat it.
Through sheer will. Now, to get things started, Terry Wilcox, the guy we just heard from, toward the end of our conversation, I asked him, what are you afraid of? A nuclear bomb, maybe, coming and blowing everything away, your sculpture included? And this is what he said.
No, what scares me are the guys out at Stony Brook. They were just at our dinner, two of these physicists, who have the government funding and are trying to create a universe. I'm not kidding. You know, I go like, you know what happened the last time a universe was created? And he says, yeah, they were kind of worried about that.
They do very odd things at Stony Brook.
So it seems.
Which is the location of one of the big super colliders in the eastern United States. At Brookhaven, it's called.
Robert Krowich? Yeah.
And so I went on the tour with, the tour guide was named Todd. He was wearing, as I remember, a Hawaiian shirt and shorts. Now, it was a little freezing. But he said, all right, let me show you around.
So we can give you a little tour around our ring. It's 2.5 miles around. It's almost exactly the size of the Indy 500 racetrack.
And we drove alongside a tube. I guess that's what it was. It was maybe 20, 25 feet high, kind of like a tunnel covered with grass.
So we've just driven around once.
And it took, I don't know, about 10, 15 minutes to get all the way around.
Now imagine doing that 78,000 times a second, and you're a proton. So.
I have never been a proton, but this does sound fast. And because this is a collider, the idea here would be to have the proton collide or bump into something with such force and such violence that for one instant it gets very hot. Hotter than the center of the sun, as hot as it got near the instant of creation. And that's why this is called a super collider. The universe one day was there.
Right.
You can't get before, right? That's the mystery line.
And that's what physicists call a singularity. Everything breaks down. In principle, unless you're God, you can't look behind that because time doesn't even exist. Time ceases to have meaning then.
So you want to tiptoe right up to the beginning. You can't get to the actual beginning, but to the first instant after the beginning.
Right. We have a pretty good idea of how the universe looked up to a few seconds after the Big Bang. And what we're doing here is we're getting down into thousandths of a second after the Big Bang.
We're in a huge, empty room.
Roughly the size of a blimp hangar.
A blimp hangar?
Small blimp.
And we're at one of the collision points right now, right?
One of the collision points right now is only about 45 or 50 feet that way.
That's the place in the collider where they expect to see these smash-ups between two protons. And it's at these points you should get, just for an instant, the heat and the debris and the chaos that's kind of like what the universe was like at the very beginning of time.
This is the closest to the beginning of the universe you'll ever get. Give me a football and you can make a pass into the early universe.
There's a kind of a funny sense like of Eden that physicists have about the very first instance of the universe. Do you think that the beginning was more beautiful than now? I mean, now it's pretty nice. But for some reason I notice that people who do what you do love the beginning. Why is that?
They love the questions. We can explain in a physical sense, using our little mathematical equations, almost everything that we see now. What we try and do is we try and smash our rocks hard enough to get some glimpse of what happened then, because that's the untold story.
In the beginning, there was a kind of simple beauty, very simple. So one of the motivating thoughts behind all these questions is, can I see it before it got complicated? Is that a part of this?
That's a deep part of it. The further back you go, you hope the simpler the explanations become, the more beautiful in some sense. The modern world is ruled by complexity and chaos, the interactions of billions and billions of particles ending up in this conversation, among other things. And none of it is really predictable because it's very, it's complexity at its finest. So we're looking for the simple origins of things. And then you get the, in some sense, being cast out of Eden by having all of those simple things coming up and creating very, very complex situations.
The world we have now has so many elements and elementary particles and rules and forces. It's messy. That's now. Then was just nicer.
In order to travel in time, we have to first accept the principle that time is here, has always been here, and always will be here. In other words, this moment in time that we're experiencing has always been here and always will be. That this moment in time, as you're listening now on the radio, as my voice comes across the wireless, this is a permanent fixture of the universe that I've always spoken on the radio and I always will speak on the radio. And you will always be listening. And you always have been listening.
But
do you understand that concept? Do you understand the concept?
I try to explain to him that I do understand his idea, but only in theory. To me, time is linear. It just is. There is a past, a present, and a future, and you can't jump in between. But David says that way of thinking is a trap.
It's basically a death trap, and you will die. I love having you here. I'm having so... What do you think?
I think it's super interesting.
We could be having so much fun in this world, instead of the stupid world we're living in.
I'm Jad Abumrad. Robert Krulwich and I will continue in a moment.
Okay.
You're
listening
to Radiolab.
On New York Public Radio.
Public Radio, WN.
There's still more to come.
Hello.
But still, the unanswered question is, what really happens in that moment when a person is suddenly gone to
the other side?
The other side. Those of us with the benefit of being alive cannot help but ask this question. It's like a curse. We want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it's not something we can know. Because this will just always be one of those domains
where the tools of science just can't be used.
Alas. But then there are those folks like neuroscientist David Eagleman who say, screw it. We're going to ask. We're going to wonder. Because that's just what we do.
When you walk to the end of the pier of science, you look out and you've got everything beyond that. You've got the whole ocean of what we don't know past the end of the pier. What a scientist does is sort of leap out onto different islands and just try things out.
I'm Jad Abumrad.
And I'm Robert Bilwich.
Today on Radiolab, we're going to do what David Eagleman suggests. We're just going to hop around.
This is unusual for us, but what the heck. We're going to look at different aspects of death and the other side in no particular order.
But here's what we can tell you. We're going to make 11 stops, 11 meditations, shall we call them, on various questions relating to
death and dying.
And what happens after. But it won't be depressing.
No.
You just heard the first one. Soul has weight, physician thinks.
Here's our second.
It comes to us from the guy you just heard, David Eagleman, who is a neuroscientist, but wrote a book called Some, which is very not neuroscience-y at all.
The truth is I haven't talked about this book with any of my science colleagues.
Why not?
I have reasons why, but I'm not sure I want to say them on the radio.
Okay. In any case, the book consists of 40 different versions of the afterlife, and here's one. It's called Metamorphosis, written by David Eagleman, and read by Jeffrey Tambor.
The actor.
Right.
There are 3 deaths. Now, the first is when the body ceases to function, of course. And the second is when the body is consigned or, put in the grave. The third is that moment, sometime in the future, when your name is spoken for the last time. So, you wait in this lobby until the third death. And there are long tables with coffee and tea, cookies. You can help yourself, and there are people here from all around the world. And with a little effort, you can strike up some convivial small talk. Just be aware that your conversation could be interrupted at any moment by, we call them the callers. And what they do is they broadcast your new friend's name to indicate that there will never again be another remembrance of him by anyone on the earth. Your friend slumps, saddened even though the callers, they tell him kindly, look, you're off to a better place. The thing is, no one knows where that better place is or what it offers because no one exiting through that door has returned to tell us. And tragically, many people leave just as their loved ones arrive, since the loved ones were the only ones doing the remembering, and we all wag our heads at that typical timing. Now, not everyone is sad when the callers shout out the next list of names. On the contrary, some people beg and they plead. These are generally the guys who've been here a long time. Too long. Take that farmer over there who drowned in a small river 200 years ago. Now get this, his farm is the site of a small college now, and the tour guides each week tell his story, so he's stuck. He's miserable. The more his story is told, the more the details drift. He's utterly alienated from his name. It's no longer identical with him, but it continues to bind. And that cheerless woman across the way is praised as a saint, even though the roads in her heart, believe me, were complicated. And I guess that is the curse of this room. Because since we live in the heads of those who remember us, we lose control of our lives and become who they want us to be.
What gave you the idea for that story?
This actually, I should say, came out of my work as a neuroscientist, because what happens in the brain is you make models of other people. When you think, well, what would my friend such and such say, or what would my wife say, you're actually running a little simulation of that person in your head. Well, what happens when somebody dies is then they exist only in the scattered heads around the globe of people who knew them. They exist in some way as these algorithms that continue to run. But through time, your model of somebody might drift.
Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult space where we have learned enough to know that we know much less than we thought.
Got you in a little box floating in the air?
But things are not the same. I don't feel real. It seems to me I might be dead. How would I know if I was dead? Weren't real. She would point to objects in the room and say, well, that cup there doesn't seem real, does it? Or the chair doesn't seem real. It just doesn't feel real. So I can see it and I can describe it to you, but it just doesn't feel real. And the thing that really made me sit up was when she said, I forget the exact phrase, but it's in the book. Eventually, Jeannie said, am I dead?
Am I dead?
Yes. Do you think I'm dead? Do you think I've died? I didn't respond immediately, and I let the silence flow. Jeannie smiled. Her face was lit with a benign perplexity. In the middle of the night, I was convinced, she said. I thought they would come to take me away. I can't say for sure that I'm dead, she continued, but things are not the same. I don't feel real. It seems to me I might be dead. How would I know if I was dead?
One of the symptoms, he says, is often this sense, deep sense that you're somehow not completely here.
Well, what one idea about this syndrome is that somehow there's a decoupling of thoughts and feelings.
Which means what exactly?
Here's how he explained it to me. The brain has two jobs it's doing at all times. The first is to keep track of what's happening outside your body, like the sights that are coming at you, smell, touch, your sensual experience of the world.
I mean, that's that immediate consciousness of the body and the world, and the body being in the world.
But all the while, the brain also is maintaining this inner life where you think thoughts and you have memories, personality.
What you normally think of when you think about yourself.
You, right? What do you think happens in this condition is that outer you,
this sort of sensual self,
somehow gets cut off from that inner mental you, and it just drifts off to sea, leaving you with just thoughts.
But it's the feelings that give us our in the moment sense of self. So if you don't have feelings attached to thoughts and perceptions,
then you're like vapor. You're there, But you have no weight. Isn't what you're describing basically one version of the afterlife? Like my body's gone, but something remains?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. It's a very, very interesting way to think about it. But is that any different than the story persisting in someone else's head?
Seven.
You guys know this group, the edge.org? It's John Brockman's group.
Yeah, we do. That's David Eagleman again. And for number 7, a brief excerpt from a conversation we had with him. If I only had a brain.
So I just wrote an essay on there yesterday. It came out.
This big ideas that will change the world? One?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's the thing that'll change everything? And my answer was, and I think this is something I'll actually see in my lifetime. So the idea is silicon immortality. In other words, downloading your consciousness into a computer, and we'll really have reached a new point where there'll be immortality.
Wow. How would you figure this would work?
So imagine you make an exact copy of the three-dimensional structure of the brain, all the neurons, all the connections between the neurons, the proteins inside, the phosphorylation states of the proteins. You make a copy of this whole thing. What matters is the algorithms that are running on top of the brain. It's not the wet, gushy stuff that matters. It's what that wet, gushy stuff is implementing. And the idea is that if you could recreate the brain out of, let's say, beer cans and tennis balls, and you get all the structure the same, and it runs the same algorithms, then that would be you. It would have your consciousness, your memories, your thoughts, and so on. Now, right now, it's science fiction because it's so much data, our current computers couldn't handle it.
Is that the only limitation? Just the hard drive size?
Well,
no, there's other limitations.
Well, there are two limitations right now. One is our imaging technology, and the other is the amount of storage capacity.
And error. I mean, you get one atom or two wrong, and all of a sudden, instead of your cat named Coco, it's now named Boko, and then you're not the same person.
No, that's not true, in fact, because every time you hit your head on a cabinet, you're actually killing lots of neurons, but that doesn't change who you are. You don't misremember your cat's name. I mean, imagine that you changed one word in the novel Moby Dick. It would still be Moby Dick.
Well, it'd be almost Moby Dick.
It would be almost Moby Dick, but you are almost the same person day to day, and you're never exactly the same person that you were yesterday because of small changes in your brain.
But let's imagine that you're right, despite Robert's objections.
I'm not even imagining it.
Let's just
I'm
say
just
you
listening
are.
to the hubris of this.
What would you actually do with a Xerox brain?
He wants to be immortal. Haven't you gotten
No, but
He's
I mean,
doing
like,
this in his own lifetime.
No, but how would you interface with a Xerox brain?
So the idea is, if we can recreate a brain in zeros and ones on a computer, then you could actually live inside of a virtual world. And you could enjoy living in this world indefinitely.
Or like the Scarecrow.
If I only had a brain.
He didn't have a real brain. He had straw and a certificate.
Well, you don't actually know that you have a real brain either, right?
What?
There are modern philosophers who deal with this in a real way. They ask, how would we know if we are a simulation?
Well, why would we die if we were a simulation?
He's not going to die. That's the
Well, so this is the point of my book, Some, is to illustrate that there are lots of possibilities out there, right?
Here it comes.
Yeah. When you...
Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you because you're about to become immortal.
So there are many different stories written here, and some of them, God is actually a married couple that got separated and then reunited, or that God is the size of a microbe.
8? Did we say 8?
Move some stuff around here. Perfect. show sound is good. I'll be able to see that during the game. We might have to reboot the game. I have one segment from a hosted Stanley playthrough. I want to show one Stanley segment during this draft run. Conveying Stanley's predicament whilst he exists in the minds of others. Oh shit. Turn that up a little bit. No parking. That'll turn me up a little bit too. I'm gonna turn off this fan noise for this to ensure that this comes good. Generally, I keep fan noise going. It's more tranquil and meditative. Okay, now we have great silence. Let's do this. Yes. Oh, some vehicles. We can't jump. Interesting, clicking is the mouse button. I don't recall that. I recall pressing E to click on everything. Perhaps I just rebound that. Yeah, see, I prefer that to be on the letter E. Alright, that was the only change we need to make. No, don't cancel that.
Welcome to the Stanley Parable demonstration. Your number is 28. When your number is displayed, please enter the demonstration room. Thank you, and have a pleasant demonstration.
Your number's 28. Thank you, Stanley. Everything's okay. Oh shit. We're just gonna watch this count. That's all we're gonna do right now. This is how this game is played. You sit and watch it. We'll stop watching it when it goes back to number 1. This is the most beautiful thing of almost any game. This is a perfect game. Yes. I heard the narrator.
Oh, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Stanley Parable live demonstration. It will be my pleasure to guide you through this sneak peek at what to expect in the Stanley Parable. A tease, just enough to leave you hungry for more. How exciting. Can't you just feel that nervous tension? The looming uncertainty? Why don't we drink in the anticipation for a moment, just for 20 minutes or so? Please, for just 20 minutes, don't move or act in any way. Simply remain motionless and let the thrill of demoing the Stanley Parable wash over you. Oh wait, I've got it. You know what would really ramp up the anticipation? If I gave you a little tour of the facility and show you how we make video game demonstrations. Yes, you'll be simply out of your mind with anxiety. Come along this way.
I think we should take the 20-minute wait first. It's too beautiful not to wait.
This is where I and the other proctors have been working meticulously to construct a demo that explains clearly and concisely exactly what the Stanley Parable is, how it plays, and why you should spend real-world money on the main game. Video game demonstrations are tricky, and without the proper technology, you run the risk of the player having no idea what to expect in the full version.
It's perfect in every way. Just like the meeting room. The employee lounge.
Here is one such technology. These buttons are meant to convey the meaning of choice and the impact of the decisions you make. After all, choices carry tremendous meaning and consequence. Didn't you know that? Go ahead. Why don't you try picking one of these buttons to press, and we'll see what your choice says about you. How fascinating. Did you know that 94% of all people who select that particular button are sexual predators? You see, our choices really do illuminate the very intangible nature of our minds and souls. Pervert. Okay, what else can I show you then? This place is the buffalo of game design. Nothing... No, we've already seen this room. If it saves you the trouble of pushing another button, I can assure you... Now I think you'll find this exciting. We've actually developed a wall that you can walk through. Go ahead, give it a shot. Guess it's still in development. Right, okay, moving along.
Life without having experienced this room was now too horrible even to
How's the
imagine.
anticipation? Still feeling it? This device tells you whether or not you're inside a video game demonstration. Somewhere around here there's also a device that tells you whether or not you're inside a device that tells you whether or not you're inside a video game demonstration.
No danger. Oh, compliments.
One of the most important parts of administering any demonstration is pumping up your ego and appealing to insecurities about your sense of self-worth. That's why we use this room to develop cheap compliments to shower on the player during the demo. Go ahead and press that button to see some of the superficial flattery we've been cooking up. My heavens! I've never met someone who can consume as much uranium in a single sitting as you can. Just look at you go.
10 billion calories.
Of all the people I know who are playing this exact demo at this exact moment and standing in this exact room, your performance is easily in the top 5,000. Top 4,700 even. I won't go as far as 4,600. Let's see. Oh, this is embarrassing. I really can't think of anything else to say. No, you've really exhausted my list of compliments. Goodness, that was fast. Either you or this department has a lot of room for improvement. Okay then, what's next?
Doesn't work anymore.
Now here's what we use to convey story. These booths convert text from a story into raw emotion. Go ahead, step into one of them and feel the sheer power of narrative exposition. Now, we have to save at least a few emotions for the full game.
Low and
within, the shame he carried that ocean breeze did drift, the fierceness of the tides, the inevitable collapse of their kingdoms, washed ashore, bereft of shame, martyrs devoid of a cause, ripping and tearing at the eternal seams. A vessel without a captain, carrying itself like plastic in the wind, hinting at a purpose that was truer in some distant memory, if only it could decipher through time's veneer whose memory it wanted to be. Where did these cliffs go? These crags that we stood upon, they shielded us from our own ignorance, spoke coddling words and wrapped our vulnerabilities in a woolen cloth that so many times I tried to set aflame. If I knew these comforts now, would their fibers be any more sensitive to the heat of my touch? Perhaps it was the cold I desired most of all, that empress to whom my flesh was always invisible. A hammock for the bones, waiting to be touched and to be known. Where did these cliffs? Where did these cliffs? Where? Where did these cliffs? Where did these cliffs go? These crags that we stood upon, they shielded us from our own ignorance, spoke coddling words. Oh, you went in both booths? Oh, how vulnerable of you. If at any point during the demo you need to cry, just let me know and we can take a minute. Are you that eager for the demo to start? Don't worry, we're almost there. This door cannot be opened because it's where you just came from. It's in the past. The Stanley Parable's official stance on the past is that it no longer exists and should be ignored. Stanley Parable Associate.
Where's the 8 button? Sure, it's here somewhere.
Where to? Now this room is perhaps the most important you'll encounter in the demo. This is where we determine whether or not the demo has been effective, whether it's conveyed the wit and soul of the Stanley Parable in such a compelling way. No! What are you doing? You can't make that decision yet. You haven't played the demo. Oh, we've put so much work into this demonstration. Wouldn't it be a shame if you rushed right into making a purchasing decision without savoring it first? Let this one simmer. You'll have plenty of time to decide later. And there you have it. everything you need to know about how video game demos are made.
Oh, we're not in the demo yet. That was the waiting room for the demo.
However, it's still important that we address safety concerns. Please closely observe the following possible negative side effects of playing the Stanley Parable. If you agree to be held 100% responsible for any and all injury or long-term damage, mental, physical or otherwise, that may occur while playing the demo, please do not press the large red glowing disagree button at this time. Nothing? No objections? You're quite sure about that? Well, all right then. In the event that you do experience one or all of the previously listed symptoms, let's establish a signal for you to convey to me that you wish the demonstration to be terminated. Please step into the dance perimeter. Please perform a dance. Your dance has been recorded. In the event that you feel confused or disoriented by anything you see inside the demo, perform that dance and I will terminate the demo immediately. Right. All preparations have been made. It is time at last. Are you prepared for the Stanley Parable? Oh wait, what are we doing here?
Welcome to the Stanley Parable Demonstration. Your number is 29. When your number is displayed, please enter the demonstration room. Thank you, and have a pleasant demonstration.
That's the narrator's wife.
Okay, I'm lost. Let's just get back to the green room and start the demo again. I must have done something wrong the first time.
What the fuck was that sound?
Okay, you know that no one is checking numbers, right? You can just go. You could do it right now, literally right this second. I don't know how no one ever figures this out. We could be back at the demo by this time. Are you enjoying this? Watching numbers tick down slowly? Well, please, don't let me stop you. If somehow you're associating the joy of this room with the joy of playing the Stanley Parable, then by all means, continue. The full version of the Stanley Parable contains all the ecstasy you are now experiencing and so much more.
This is true. Each room is eternal.
And we can move on now. The demo. My goodness, this room really means something special to you, doesn't it? Is it a connection? A spark? Something between you and this room that runs deeper? Well, I have to say, I'm really quite moved. You know what? Go ahead. Take your time. I'll wait. Okay, here we go. The Stanley Parable demo, take 2. Finding the demo, learning exactly what the Stanley Parable is. Here it comes.
What's a room? What's a room? What's a room? Why?
Oh, wait, what's this?
Eight.
Wait, this is wrong. This isn't the Stanley Parable. This is a game where you press a button and it says 8. Not only is the Stanley Parable not a game about continuously pressing the number 8, I can guarantee that this button does not appear anywhere in the main game. Why is it here instead of the demo for the Stanley Parable? Where did the demo go? There was an actual demo here before. Something has gone wrong. It's all gone horribly wrong. We need to get you out of here before you start forming impressions of the Stanley Parable based on whatever the hell this 8 game is. We need to get out. We need to start over. You mustn't stay here another minute. Out! Go!
8.
Now, I think perhaps you've misunderstood me, so let me reiterate as clearly as I can. This is not the Stanley Parable. What you are doing is pushing a button over and over that does nothing but speak the word 8. Has that gotten through? You may be continuing to press this button under the impression you're playing the Stanley Parable right now. An assumption that is, I should remind you again, entirely erroneous.
8.
Doesn't even make sense. Why would I have gone to all of this elaborate setup just to demonstrate a game that doesn't do a single thing except repeat the word 8? The waiting room, the green room, the tour of the facility, all of that for no reason other than to contextualize and build up this particular game. Why? What about this game deserves any of that time and attention? Are you seeing something in it that I'm not?
8.
Okay, here's the deal. It isn't possible that you still think this is the Stanley Parable. I've restated the fact too many times, which means that you are now consciously choosing to delay the actual demo as long as possible. Is that it? Are you afraid of the Stanley Parable?
8.
I suppose another possibility is that you can't hear me because you're playing with the sound off. In which case, what are you even getting out of this 8 game in the first place? This scenario is perhaps even more concerning.
8. 8. 8.
You really are finding this amusing, aren't you? The experience of pushing a button and it says 8. Is this intrinsically captivating to you on its own as a legitimate experience? I mean, I'm starting to wrap my head around the idea, but it's not all the way there. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. This is coming from the person who sat in the waiting room when the door was open right there. If you're the kind of person this demo is targeting, I guess I should be a little concerned for our sales numbers.
8. 8. 8.
The funny thing is, you haven't even played the Stanley Parable yet. How can you be sure that this is a better game? Is this simply more compelling than you imagine the Stanley Parable to be? Have you formed such a rich vision of the game already? What exactly did I do that gave you such a miserable, awful impression of what it's like to play the Stanley Parable? Was it the dance? Yes, it was almost certainly the dance. I regret that now.
8. 8.
Regret.
8. 8.
Well, the good part is that if this is your metric for quality in a game, when we do get to the Stanley Parable, you'll be thrilled, shocked, blown away. Every one of your faculties will be enraptured by the experience of a game that does anything more than say 8 over and over. Yes, I can't wait for your entire world to be shattered and rebuilt. A magical moment we'll all share together.
8.
Oh, I'm not going to pretend I don't know what's going on here. You're so utterly compelled by this game that you don't intend to stop playing it until you pass out from physical exhaustion. Well, tell you what, I'll just be right here and wait for you to finish. I'm sure the Stanley Parable demo will still be out there somewhere when you're all done. In the meantime, I'm going to stop acknowledging you and just let you get it out of your system. Please, enjoy the 8 game. Take as much time as you need.
8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8.
8.
8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8.
Oh, I thought I was going to stop saying 8 for a second.
8.
It did one
8.
silent one.
8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8. 8.
Alright, stuck.
8.
Now what happens if we try to also leave?
Oh, you're done. Well, in that case, what do you say we get back to business and start this demo over from the top?
How? Oh shit. Help me elucidate these strange and unknowable desires of yours, Stanley.
Welcome to the Stanley Parable demonstration. Your number is 30. When your number is displayed, please enter the demonstration room. Thank you, and have a...
Now, no time for exploration. We've got business to attend to.
I don't think so. Oh shit, this is the very beginning.
Okay, now let's take a minute to get something straight here. When you sit down to play this demo, you are assuming an amount of responsibility for its outcome. Now, I can't say for certain whether you caused us to encounter the 8 game rather than the Stanley Parable, but I think it's a pretty safe assumption that you had something to do with it. At this time, please take a minute to think about all of the mistakes you've made in playing this demonstration, as well as your lack of respect for demo taking in general. Wonderful. I could really feel the introspection on my end. Now that we're all on the same page again, I feel ready to attempt the demonstration once more. In this third attempt, we shall truly come to understand the meaning of the Stanley Parable. Let the demonstration begin.
I think we need to take a rest first. Get some soda. Hold a soda. Then drive the cars. No. The door is not functioning correctly. Neither is that one. Oh shit, look at this. It's all destroyed. Whoa.
What? No, it can't be over yet. You didn't see anything. Everything that was supposed to demonstrate why the Stanley Parable is a quality experience worth your time and money. It was here somewhere, I'm sure of it. Oh, no. We have to get out of here. We have to find something for you to do, anything. The demo cannot end like this. Hurry, this way.
Oh no, not this room.
Okay, yes. This is new. This is different. Surely there must be a game somewhere in here. Okay. Oh, how about this cup? Yes, go pick up the cup. All right. Now put it, in the bin.
What the fuck happened to it? It vanished. We need a new cup. Now I think we actually have to restart. For real.
Oh, you're not going to put the cup in the bin.
There is no
Yes,
cup.
that's a game too. Preventing the cup from entering the bin. And you won.
No, you
Do you
did
know
that.
what you get for winning? An achievement. Wow, the Stanley
shit.
Parable just keeps getting better and better. In fact, let me take a little survey of your experience. Based on what you've played so far, would you purchase the Stanley Parable? You responded
What a clear and straightforward demonstration of the merits of the Stanley Parable. I am convinced of the quality of the full game.
Incredible. You really do get it. You understand. Oh, I was so worried. I just wanted you to know what I see in the Stanley Parable. What I think makes it, well, special. It's so very difficult to put into words. Oh, we're all beyond that now, aren't we? Come along. Let's get to the end and the final choice.
Waiting room. The cup is up on top of there.
Ending, where are you? Where are you?
Oh, there's the disagree button.
Is this it? Yes, the end. Now, this is where we want the demo to be over. And I think it's time for you to log your final decision as to whether or not the Stanley Parable is any good. And it all comes to this. Please consider very carefully before answering. Much is at stake.
I believe there's only one right way to answer this. Gravity. We need to jump off. There's no desks to climb.
Is it working? Are you sure? You sure you pressed the button? What? No, we finished the demo. Did it start again? Hello? Is anyone there? They already finished. They said they liked it. I need someone to stop the demo. Hello? We need to go back. We need to get out of here.
The buttons don't work. I don't remember this at all.
Oh no, what's going on? Where is everyone? Okay, over to the left, down this way.
Adventure Line.
Oh, nice and quiet. Finally. Well, I suppose we can both agree that I failed, haven't I? My job was to be a teacher, and I so badly wanted to teach you exactly what the Stanley Parable is supposed to be, but somehow I couldn't. Well,
Zen.
At any rate, I don't know if I care for the Stanley Parable anymore. Do you think any of this is actually in the main game? Honestly, I doubt it. What would that even look like? No, I think I've had enough of it. No more doors, no more demonstrations, no more endings. That's the other problem with this game. There's too many bloody endings. I'm sick of them. How can one game end so many times? It doesn't make sense. Oh, but back at the beginning of the demonstration, that was lovely. No concerns about where it was all going. No confusion. Just a blank slate. Yes, that's what I want. A game of beginnings. Hey, do you remember, just a few minutes ago, when we met for the first time, and I showed you the technology used to make the demo, because I thought there actually was a demo. Oh, we were so naive back then, how little we knew of the world. And then when we ended up back in the waiting room, even though you'd already done that before, yes, it's all so fresh in my memory. They were such wonderful moments. Oh, and then when we played the game with the cup and you won, and then we kept wandering and we ended up in a stairwell somewhere and we just kept climbing and climbing, flight after flight after flight. I thought they would never end. And then we were on some kind of catwalk. I didn't have any idea what was down there. Did you? And we just kept going and we found that elevator and it said escape on it. And we talked about it for a while. About how we couldn't possibly know whether this was really an escape, but that it seemed worth a try, and at the very least it would be an adventure. So we got inside and we rode the elevator up and up and up. We had some sense that the end was coming, but we couldn't possibly know when. And then after so long, it finally stopped. And we stepped out into the lush outdoors, the trees, the wildlife, the sun rising on a new and glorious path. Freedom. We were free. There was nothing to think, nothing to know. Simply us being right there in that moment. Wasn't it so beautiful? Wasn't that moment so singularly,
shit, you can walk?
piercingly beautiful? We were free.
You know, because I wanted to put him down here, but basically, right. And with that example, are you
does it work does it still work? Do you feel fluffy without going down the same thing? Or does it have to be
Perfect game. Okay, now we have a narration about death, and then one more piece from Stanley Parable hosting content. Let's check that out first. Which one were we showing? The German playthrough. That was just precious. Let's cue that up first, and then I'll play the Watts selection.
Das Spiel ist weg. Okay, gut.
Step forward, please. Are you listening to me?
Yes, this one.
Can you hear me?
Fuck yes. She claps for it too. This is fucking great. Let's go back to the beginning of this run. We'll include that in this episode right here. Yes, I love this one. Okay, no.
Then came just two. He came just next door when Stanley came. Fixed.
Yes, this is the one. Fuck yes. This is so precious. It's so adorable, I can't even describe it in words. Okay, yes, yes.
In die Meinung.
Anyway.
Wahl mich.
Since we come.
Yes, this is the one. It's so beautiful.
Did you
back to the beginning. We're almost there. Yeah. Is this it?
Das ist irgendwie ein guter Tag. Nicht.
for her? Are you for time?
Is this the first ending she did? Oh, this is 10 minutes in. Okay, two doors.
Oh, nice.
Let's play it back in 480. Oh wow, this is, she actually went straight to this ending. This is fucking amazing. That's very, very appropriate. Okay, so I'm just gonna start this video at the very beginning and play all of it. I see no reason not to do so. I'll cut some of it out probably when I create the highlight. Quit. Goodbye demonstration. Okay.